Hi everyone, in today's video we are going to hit the topic of divine masculine and feminine and relationships in general. So this is a topic that I find very, very fascinating because historically we've always viewed masculine and feminine as words to describe gender. And when you really get into the nuances of our own personality and how we act in relationships, whether it is with our family members or with, a stranger or with work colleagues, tapping into understanding the nuances of this concept of masculine and feminine energy can really help you get ahead of the game, get you into a state where you're more likely to be successful, you're more likely to have joy and forward movement in your expectations and your journey in your relationships in general. So we'll start out by just defining that. And what I like to do is I like to talk about, it looks almost like a half circle. And on this half circle we have divine masculine on one side and divine feminine. Those are right up the middle. And then as you move over this way, it goes into the wounded or toxic masculine and the wounded or toxic feminine. So this half circle can be a sort of base that you guys can check into at any moment. So I would strongly recommend you do this prior to, let's say you have scheduled a meeting with your boss. Tap into the half circle. Let's say you're going to pick up your kid from school. Tap into the half circle. So utilizing, kind of finding out where you're at, getting yourself centered. Then the other person has a chance to be responsible and sovereign for themselves. So we'll get to that piece in a second. But what I want you to understand are the traits that allow you to be in the divine versus slipping over into the wounded or toxic. So let's start on the masculine side first. So the toxic of the masculine is something, unfortunately, as a society, we know all too well, which is sort of the classical patriarchy, where there is egoism, ego and consumerism, and everything's driven primarily by the need to win and the sort of taking energy, vampiric energy, where things aren't considered, like the earth and its impact by consumerism, or other people and their ability to kind of navigate in that space. It's just purely driven by greed, control, and ego. We have, and I want to remind you here, everybody watching this video has been all four of these energies. So it doesn't matter if you are the kindest, sweetest, feminine female there is, you have tapped into and tried out this toxic or wounded masculine. And you may not be able to think of a time you did that right this minute, but I guarantee you it has happened to the best of us. So you'll find, maybe even if you've had an issue with someone, a colleague at work, and you finally stand up for yourself, did you do it from a wounded toxic place, or were you able to do it from a divine balanced place? So the divine masculine I'm going to save for last, because I think it is probably the hardest to attain, because we don't have a lot of examples of that in the world today. So let's flip over now on our little half circle to the wounded or toxic feminine. Remember, guys, you have been in this wounded or toxic feminine as well, sometimes very often. So the wounded or toxic feminine is the classic victim. So that's the energy where everything has an explanation. I can't take care of myself because I can't afford healthy food, or I always get fired because they're after me because of my, they're jealous of this, that, and the other. So it can present like as a poor wounded victim who could be somebody who actually is a victim. So let's talk about that too. We are getting victimized. Things are happening, quote unquote, too, but really around us that may be awful. So the easiest example, the most recent, is the storms that we've had. by far, yes, there are victims of those storms. That is true. But are you going to feel that and then move into a coping sort of divine energy? Or are you going to choose to stay? The problem comes in when these become our identity. When we stay in one of these two, toxic or wounded, for too long, then it becomes a default and often is subconscious. So we'll flip into the blame game, or trying to explain something away, or procrastinating because that allows us to stay in that victim energy. So that's an example of the two wounded energies. Now to go into the divine feminine. That's an energy that tends to come a little easier to women as a whole, but there are many men that we know who tap into this as well, where it's those people who have that bigger, caring heart energy. They are more connected both to each other, to themselves. They flow. There's a little more use of intuition. There's a little more community vibes, like let's all do this together, let's stay together, let's flow, let's kind of like in a community where everybody just pitches in, that kind of energy. But it's also a superpower, because that divine feminine leading in a way that is tapping in will bring creativity, will bring new ideas, and will help kind of bring everybody together. That's divine feminine. So many men, you want to really work on those specific traits. Maybe in your meditation, ask for more guidance, for more intuition. Try to get out, and this is not just for men, but many women live more in their masculine as well. Try to just move a little. So the tools to help you get into that divine feminine, movement is a key, music, journaling, anything that's sort of freeing and will allow you to just flow. Connecting to nature. Nature is very divine feminine, the earth. Divine masculine, I saved for last because I find it to be a little more of a unicorn. It is, as I said, a little harder to find on the planet today, but it's becoming more and more present, and we need it. This is what the planet, the earth, and humanity needs, is more people acting in a balance of their divine feminine and masculine, and really understanding the divine masculine. So the divine masculine is what many females have trouble achieving, and that is a position of power, the ability to have power, the ability to lead, the ability to take action, but to do it from a grounded, gratitude-filled, love-filled space. So to come from that as your motivation instead of ego, control, and money. And truthfully, the money and the leadership comes in that space even more than it ever will in the toxic. Because when we lead from love and we take action, then we set the example for other people to get into their sovereignty. And we're going to talk about that in another video that you can link or watch about making decisions and how you want to be sovereign when you make decisions. So next time you have something come up, whether it's already a stressful situation, or let's say you're about to go in and have a meeting in your office and you're leading it, or like we said, you're picking up your kid and you want to be like really present, just check in to that half circle and get out of victim, get out of control, just be open and flowing, open to ideas, creativity, intuition, partnership, and also be willing to take action. And that's something I know I have had to really work on. The divine feminine comes relatively easy to me. I played music growing up. I can turn music on and dance and move around. I tend to have a lot of intuition. I tend to come up with lots of creative ideas, but taking them into the next step where action's happening and plans are in place and I'm delegating. These are things and skills that I personally have had to work on, and I've done a really good job in terms of helping myself get to the next level where I can see myself a little bit more balanced, more often. So what happens is when you do that, now with that framework, we're going to go into some relationship things. And what I wanted to talk about were expectations. So like if we talk about society as a whole, we are so programmed with expectations, whether it's how we're supposed to act as a woman or a man, like I just mentioned, or how we're supposed to act maybe in a certain religion, if you're active in a religion, or how you're supposed to act as a parent or as a kid. You know, how you're supposed to act with your own parents, even if you're grown. So these expectations or programs, which is a better word for it, are the ways that it's always been done that way, where you would have heard that, well, that's how it was in my house growing up. You may have heard that from your parents. You've just watched as the familial behaviors, traumas, actions are just passed down generation to generation. And I want you to understand that you guys here today, we are at the most exciting time to be on the planet, because everything is literally ready to be blown up. So let's hope it doesn't actually blow up. We're going to blow it up metaphorically and energetically by shifting these expectations, getting out of both cultural and familial programming, and instead becoming sovereign. And how we do that is we just have awareness. So tapping in, and sometimes it just takes one person to break some of that generational trauma and patterns and behaviors. Tap in, start being accountable, start speaking up, having an opinion and taking action, but instead of it going, and very often this is a warning for you, as you start trying to kind of make a new path for you and your family, and your friends and the planet, it's very easy to tip into toxicity, because that is the only example many of us have had of, let's say, action and things moving forward and getting things done has been in that toxic, controlling energy. And it may not seem the same, but energetically it is. So can you find a way to delegate and lead and take action and provide hope and be a leader from that space that is more balanced and coming from love? So what I have found is many of my patients, they will know that things should be better. For example, let's say in their marriage, they'll know, and this could be my male and my female patients, but they have forgotten who they are. So when you've become a parent for so many years, and the disconnect, because that becomes from society and culturally, that is the judgment, is that what are you? You are a parent, and then your identity is gone by the time your kids are going on their way. Then it's literally lost humans that I see every single day in my office. So how can we, if you're younger or don't have kids yet, if you have young kids, if your kids are already grown, how can you step in wherever you are today and reconnect without societal expectations and conditioning stepping in? And what I would ask you to do is just think back to a time way before, when you were younger, maybe teenage years, early 20s. If you're in your 20s, like, what do you like to do now that gets you excited? So like maybe it was music, like I said. Maybe it's sports and physical activity. Maybe you always liked dancing. Whatever that little flair that gave you that extra oomph, or maybe you like to cook. Can you just bring that back in? And by that, I don't mean go, to cook to chef school. Can you just go shopping and make one meal? Can you turn on music in the background? Things that aren't overwhelming, that'll get your body moving, that'll get you back in touch with who you are at a soul level. And I think one of the biggest advices I have is you're not going to switch your relationship experience with one or two times. This takes practice breaking out of societal expectations, cultural conditioning is going to really take you working on self-love to a point where the others around you and their expectations are not going to impact you. And that's really, really hard. So where you can get help with this, I think as what you can expect is as you start speaking up, and one example I can give you is I always wanted to go on to conferences, and I would go occasionally, but it was always a big ordeal because I couldn't explain leaving my kids, and what about if somebody else needed me here or the office, too many things going on, and I would talk myself out of it. And there was one day, I still remember the day, where there was a conference. It was in San Francisco. Every one of the speakers looked amazing. I didn't really know anyone going. I just felt called. And I stayed in my heart. I bypassed the loops of programming, the societal, my own, family, my own. Usually, honestly, it's not even those impacts. It's our own self-judgment. I bypassed it, short-circuited it, and went into myself, made the decision, clicked, bought the ticket, walked out, told my family I'm going to San Francisco, and guess what? Nobody cared. They were happy. Great, when are you going? And I remember wait, it was that easy? Wow. So you will find that too. It may not be that example. Maybe it is your mom always wants to go to the same restaurant. And you want to be with her, but you hate that restaurant. Speaking up and just saying, hey, I don't really want to go there. I would like to go here. And what you'll find is when you first start doing that and reclaiming some of that space, you're going to have to learn how to deal with the expectation that people may react. And that's okay. So in summary for this video, I would suggest from a relationship standpoint that if you are dealing with your spouse, if you're dealing with your kids, if you're dealing with a work partner, a boss, a friend, a parent, tap into yourself first. Use the structure of divine masculine and feminine. Figure out where you are. And the same goes, so trying to be proactive in that will be really great. But the same goes for if you've had a rough interaction. Instead of that spiral looping and spinning it around and ruminating and all of that judgment, take a second, stop, draw the little graph and try to figure out maybe where the person you're interacting with in that relationship, where they were coming from, and then how did you react? And what I have found and what you guys will find is the more often you stay in that healthy, balanced space, and it's not easy, but the more often you can hold in sort of intuition, connection, empathy, but also have boundaries and lead from an actionable place. And you and the person in the relationship may do a dance. Sometimes you'll be more in your masculine, sometimes they'll be more in their masculine. That's where the most beautiful relationships come in, sovereign relationships. And I do believe learning some of this requires a relationship where two humans are willing to both be sovereign. And that doesn't need to be, again, your romantic relationships only, although that's one of the most common places people will learn it. It can also be a mother and a child, or friends, or a parent, or a colleague. So start practicing there. I can't wait to hear how you do, how it changes your life, because it's definitely helped change mine, and it's what I see we need for the greater good of humanity. We need to be learning how to navigate relationships internally, especially the first one, which is that with ourselves.